Could Asia take global dominance from 2025? A prophecy that makes major powers uneasy. Have you ever wondered so much about the future that you long to know exactly what would happen to you? This is never a simple matter, because sometimes knowing your destiny in advance doesn't necessarily bring peace of mind. It can even spark greater anxiety. Yet, in America of the previous century, there emerged a woman who astonished high society with her extraordinary ability to predict events. Not only could she accurately foretell your future career path, she could also pinpoint the exact moment your other half would enter your life and even foresee a person's final breath. The story took place on January 10, 1942. Carole Lombard, a widely popular actress in the United States at that time, visited an upscale beauty salon. Suddenly, a middle-aged woman with a tense expression approached her, cautiously warning, "Within the next 6 months you must avoid flying, otherwise your life will be at risk." Although somewhat surprised, Carole Lombard calmly replied that she had an upcoming flight and believed she would be safe. Yet, only a few days later, Flight number 3 of the Global American Airlines, suspected of a control malfunction, crashed and claimed the lives of all on board, including Carole Lombard. The woman who cautioned Lombard was no random alarmist. She was Jean Dixon, a renowned prophet in 20th century America. Many prominent figures, including Winston Churchill, Harry S. Truman, and even President Roosevelt himself, conversed with her in person. Invited twice to the White House for consultation, Jean Dixon not only predicted with precision the time of President Kennedy's death, but also spoke beforehand about the rise of China. She even mentioned 2025 as a significant milestone, signaling an event of global scale. To this day, most of Jean Dixon's prophecies have proven astonishingly accurate. She left several more predictions about the future, tied to a crucial number for humanity. So, do Dixon's forecasts for the year 2025 lead us to an optimistic scenario or to dire upheavals? And besides Dixon, who else has prophesied regarding that mysterious number? An even more incredible question arises. How do prophets like her seemingly see through the future? Could it be that everything was long predestined? Today, on the Trietli Non-Sin channel, we'll guide you through the enigma surrounding Jean Dixon, a remarkable female prophet of the United States. Back in March 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected, becoming the 32nd President of the United States. Few could imagine that his personal destiny and the country's future were closely linked to the advice of a woman endowed with the ability to perceive crucial events. Specifically, what did she foretell? And if Asia dominates the world by 2025, as she predicted, how would the global landscape be reshaped? When Roosevelt officially took office, the United States was mired in the Great Depression. Unemployment soared above 25%, farm prices plummeted by up to 60%, and millions were left homeless due to economic hardship. In his inaugural address, Roosevelt repeatedly promised to muster all resources to lift the nation out of turmoil. And indeed, he took decisive action to fulfill that pledge. By 1944, Roosevelt was 62 years old, setting a record by winning a 4th consecutive U.S. presidential term. However, his health had significantly deteriorated. A series of conditions such as high blood pressure and arterial sclerosis were all kept top secret. The American public was unaware of how dire his state was. Yet Jean Dixon, the famed prophet, knew the real situation all too well. In a book she wrote, Dixon recounted that on an early morning in November 1944, she received a succinct phone call. "The president wants to see you." Immediately afterward, a White House car arrived to pick her up. Dixon was unsurprised, as though she had already seen it coming. In truth, this wasn't the first time Dixon had met President Roosevelt. 3 years earlier, at a fundraising event, she found him robust, with a resonant voice. Yet Dixon understood that his health would soon fail. She had even told Senator Truman at the time that in the future he would become vice president and then swiftly ascend to the presidency within that same term. When Dixon was brought to the White House, Roosevelt asked bluntly, "When will I have to give up my work?" Dixon answered, "No more than 6 months from now." Hearing this, he was eager to learn about the global outlook. Dixon asserted that World War II was nearing its end. The Soviet Union would rise to lead the communist bloc, continually competing with the U.S. in military and scientific matters. Yet in the end, both powers would find a way to reach détente. Jean Dixon also told Roosevelt that America's primary concern was not the Soviet Union, but rather Red China. Notably, her use of the specific term "red" at the time showed she did not merely gauge America's future, she also perceived Asia's destiny. Less than 2 months after that encounter, Roosevelt once again summoned Dixon to the White House, but she never disclosed the substance of that meeting. On April 12, 1945, President Roosevelt passed away at his old residence, precisely within the no more than 6 months time frame Dixon had given. Senator Truman succeeded him, shocking the entire country. So, who exactly was Jean Dixon to predict upcoming circumstances so accurately? Let's journey back to 1911, when young Dixon received a gift that would shape her fate. She was born in 1904 in Wisconsin, and from a young age, her parents noticed their daughter possessed extraordinary traits. For instance, at just 5 years old, Dixon insisted her mother find an envelope with a black border. Her parents were puzzled because they had no such envelope in the house. 10 days later, they received news that Dixon's grandfather had died, accompanied by a letter whose border was indeed black, just as Dixon had described. On another occasion, Dixon's father traveled to Chicago on business. A few days afterward, the little girl suddenly expressed excitement to her mother. "Daddy is bringing home a huge black and white dog." The letter from her father had made no mention of purchasing a dog, but Dixon calmly said, "I just saw it happen." Sure enough, her father soon returned with exactly that kind of large black and white dog. Realizing their daughter had a knack for seeing the future, Dixon's parents took her in 1911 to meet a renowned fortune teller who had come to California. True enough, after reading Dixon's palm, the woman declared, "This young girl will one day become a great prophet." Having said that, the fortune teller Geoghegan gave Dixon a crystal ball. Instantly, Dixon felt a premonition, warning Geoghegan to be careful or risk getting burned. As foretold, not long after, Geoghegan had an accident in the kitchen and was splashed with boiling water. Moreover, Dixon also saw what lay in store for her brother when they were playing together, foretelling that Ernie would become an outstanding athlete. Indeed, a decade later, Ernie rose to fame as a top American football star. Even Mary Dressler, an Oscar-winning actress, recalled that if 9-year-old Dixon hadn't assured her she would be famous, Dressler might have quit acting then and there. In discussing Jean Dixon's well-known prophecies, one cannot overlook the following phase. After Dixon was invited to the White House twice, she became increasingly sought out by high-level political figures. In 1906, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, visiting the U.S., met her to ask whether he would win re-election. Dixon insisted that he would lose. At the time, Churchill was believed to be a towering figure, and the press was confident he would prevail. Only Dixon predicted defeat. Churchill fumed, but she reassured him that he would return with the eastern winds at his back in a few years. Indeed, in July 1945, Churchill was defeated by Clement Attlee. Yet 6 years later, he reclaimed the position of British Prime Minister. In an interview, Dixon revealed that plenty of influential individuals sought her help in seeing their future, though Kennedy was never among them. By 1952, Dixon had a vivid impression of a dark cloud hovering over the White House, followed by the image of a brown-haired, blue-eyed man dying. Initially, she had no idea who that person was, as President Truman was still in office, and he didn't match the description. However, with time, the signs she witnessed grew clearer. In 1956, Jean Dixon, for the first time, stated in Parade magazine that in the 1960 U.S. presidential election, the Democratic candidate would win but be assassinated during his tenure. This prediction immediately sparked public uproar. everyone feared the day it might come true. Time passed. By 1963, John F. Kennedy was in the White House. He remained skeptical of Dixon's clairvoyance. Yet one morning in August 1963, Dixon abruptly awoke in panic, perceiving that the dark cloud she typically saw over the White House had become far more ominous. Alarmed, she phoned Miss Lear, a mutual acquaintance of the president, and urged that Kennedy postpone his southern trip. Unfortunately, Miss Lear failed to deliver the message, believing Kennedy would disregard it anyway. In October 1963, just over a month before tragedy struck, the strange omens became even more explicit to Dixon. She told a friend she could see two black hands erasing Vice President Lyndon Johnson's nameplate from his office door, implying he might take over. Simultaneously, Dixon sensed a peculiar name of 5-6 letters, the second being S, the final letter having a hooked shape, while the first was possibly O or C. Then, on November 22, 1963, in the midst of a meal with a friend, Dixon suddenly put down her fork. Moments later, the news broke that President Kennedy had been assassinated. Investigations implicated Lee Harvey Oswald, the name precisely matching those details. It began with O, followed by S, and ended with a D that had an upward hook. Dixon's accurate forecasts weren't limited to Kennedy alone. She had predicted 2 years prior that the Soviet Union would launch a silver sphere into Earth's orbit, that is, Sputnik, and that the Pope would be threatened by an assassin. Yet, Dixon wasn't infallible. She believed the USSR would be the first to put a person on the moon, whereas it was in fact the U.S. that accomplished that feat. Could Asia take global dominance from 2025? A prophecy that makes major powers uneasy. Reflecting on Jean Dixon's prophecies, it appears the essential aspect isn't merely whether she was right or wrong, but rather it underscores humanity's deeper longing to glimpse its fate. History shows that such prophecies do influence public mindset and political decision-making, even though many question whether anyone can truly see ahead of time. Meanwhile, modern science continues to probe how certain individuals gain information within elusive dimensions. Some attribute it to keen observation or a vivid imagination, while others suspect an unproven supernatural power. Regardless, Jean Dixon's case reveals that numerous major events may have been intuited by someone beforehand. That doesn't force everyone to believe, but it does introduce a broader perspective on human insight and intuition. Dixon did occasionally get things wrong. For instance, she claimed that a politician named Water River would run for the U.S. presidency in 1964, which never happened. She also asserted that Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau and his young wife would have a second daughter, but in fact, it was a boy. Even so, her overall success rate stayed sufficiently high for her to maintain widespread support. Next, Triet Lee Nan Sin Channel invites you to examine the future scenario that Dixon described. In 1971, she released A Call to Glory, Vietnamese title Ve Goi Hui Hoang, asserting that by 2020 the entire planet would face an Armageddon-like war. Skeptics pointed out that no World War III erupted in 2020, while supporters argued that Dixon's End of the World War might have referred to a global pandemic, a duel between good and evil, or a crisis where humanity is forced to make life or death decisions. Moreover, in My Life and Prophecies, Vietnamese title Quoc Doi Toi Va Dun Gon, Dixon predicted that after 2025, China would clash with Russia, ultimately emerging victorious. Whether such a conflict will really happen in 2025 is unknown. But what captures Triet Lee Nan Sin's attention is that not only Dixon, but many other seers have highlighted that same date, 2025. Could that year contain a monumental upheaval? On another note, sometimes you needn't be a prophet to sense certain forthcoming events. For example, you might randomly think of a friend you haven't contacted in ages, only to have them call you minutes later. Or you dream about a bizarre scenario that unexpectedly comes true in real life. Previously, on some channel videos, we discussed a prophetic manga from 1999 that repeatedly predicted future occurrences, including the global-shaking 3/11 earthquake in Japan. The manga's author, Tatsuki, explained she often viewed future images in her dreams and simply recorded them. These examples show that the ability to foresee events can exist in various forms, though the degree differs. Some call it a sixth sense, others think it's coincidence or strong reasoning skills. Whether from a scientific or spiritual standpoint, phenomena like Dixon's visions remain highly debatable yet undeniably fascinating, especially when tied to major dates like 2020 or 2025. What fate awaits us, and is 2025 truly a pivotal juncture? Perhaps only time can unravel this. This year, the same manga creator has released an expanded version of The Future I Saw, Vietnamese title Tuong Lai Matoi Nin Thai, which asserts that on July 5, 2025, a calamity even more devastating than the 3/11 earthquake may occur in the South Seas area of Japan. Notably, a new landmass is supposedly going to emerge and connect Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the Philippines into one unified bloc. Many people consider this fantastical, yet historically, Earth's continents have indeed separated or joined at different points in time. Even more intriguing is that Japan once had an individual claiming to be from the year 2062. Prior to the 3/11 quake, this person appeared on the popular two-channel forum, urging everyone to flee to higher ground. Sure enough, the 3/11 disaster did strike shortly afterward. What further intrigues many is how this 2062 traveler, similar to Tatsuki, pointed to a massive quake in the South Seas, but with different timing. 2062 said it would be in 2022 on some unspecified day in April, whereas Tatsuki named July 5, 2025. As both had accurately warned of the 3/11 quake and other Japanese disasters, some people choose to believe better safe than sorry, rather than be caught off guard. In truth, even if you don't believe in prophecies, being prepared in earthquake-prone regions like Japan is essential. And for those who do believe, there's no need for utter despair, as quite a few prophets claim that after disaster, humanity may progress toward a brighter stage. In line with Gene Dixon's words, though there might be war after 2025, a compassionate figure in the East will rise, binding a fractured humanity and guiding the world toward peace. In other words, life abounds in challenges, but should we unite and support one another, we may well discover a path to a more hopeful future. What do you think? Do you believe in humanity's capacity for prophecy? What's your perspective on Gene Dixon's predictions? Feel free to share your thoughts in the video's comment section. Ultimately, in any turbulent era, there is so much to reflect upon and learn. If you find the content here on Trietli Non-Sin valuable, don't forget to drop a comment, hit the like button, share, and subscribe to keep receiving more meaningful insights. Sincere thanks for accompanying faith in God on this journey of exploring life's significance and cultivating compassion. I also wish to express my personal viewpoint about the chain of prophecies surrounding Gene Dixon and other seers, especially concerning the year 2025, from a Catholic perspective. First, we're familiar with Gene Dixon's predictions, renowned for foretelling President Roosevelt's death, President Kennedy's assassination, and the rise of Red China. Additionally, many other sources mention 2025 as a potential milestone for large-scale warfare, natural catastrophes, or the emergence of a remarkable individual who brings global peace. In Japan, certain figures, including Tatsuki and the self-proclaimed visitor from 2062, speak of significant turmoil between 2022 and 2025, prompting widespread unease. From a Catholic standpoint, we believe Jesus Christ affirmed that he would return at the end of time, yet Scripture states that only God alone knows the precise day and hour. The Church exercises caution regarding prophets who specify exact timelines, for while the public revelation in the Bible undergirds our faith, there are also private revelations. Nonetheless, private revelations aren't automatically placed on par with official church teachings. The faithful are encouraged to study them prudently, avoiding distress over unverified claims. Regardless of whether you believe in non-religious prophecies, the Church emphasizes staying prepared both spiritually and practically. In regions prone to earthquakes or similar hazards, having a contingency plan is vital. In terms of faith, Catholics should remain steadfast in charity, strong in belief, and ready to aid those in need. If someone appears and leads the world toward peace, we perceive it as a symbol of God's mercy or a tool He uses to guide human history. Whether this individual is a Catholic or not, any act that promotes human unity and love is indeed worthy of esteem and prayer. In my opinion, the crux doesn't lie in whether 2025 might bring war or apocalypse, but in how we live now. Christ's words, "Stay awake, for you do not know on which day your Lord will come," remind us not to be careless, striving to live righteously, and not to become alarmed by speculative predictions. Even in a turbulent world, the Church's hope rests in the Lord, who promised, "I am with you always until the end of the age." We should remember that throughout history, various prophecies have sometimes caused anxiety. Yet other times they galvanize us to repent, love, and pursue justice. If a seer exhorts us to repent, abandon evil, and seek holiness, that aligns wholeheartedly with the spirit of the gospel. Indeed, moments of adversity can be opportunities for communities to come together, reaffirm core moral values, and strengthen bonds of solidarity. In conclusion, as a Catholic, I receive these predictions, including Jeane Dixon's, as a cautionary note, encouraging readiness rather than absolute reverence. I believe the key is to uphold charity, engage in good works, and ponder the mission of living the gospel in a world that is anything but stable. Our trust is anchored in God, the divine providence, and only time will validate or refute every prophecy. Meanwhile, let's all live responsibly, care for our families and societies, and jointly build a better tomorrow.